Anne, let's
Hello.
start with you
Oh,
because
good.
you
I am
are,
the least qualified person to give advice to parents.
but you're a second generation
First
home
gen.
Well,
educated.
I didn't know that.
Well, first gen. Yeah,
First gen.
because I forgot to have any children yet. I will hopefully one day be a second gen as well. But yeah,
I
yeah,
thought you were home educated.
yeah. I've never been to school. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I haven't got any children to then, home educate myself. But yeah, so yeah. So yeah, I've never been to school, so that's my thing. So yeah, hi, I'm Anne. I've never been to school. I am now in my exceedingly late 30s, and I am involved in various home ed groups at a national level. So I'm a trustee for the Centre for Personalised Education, which doesn't just look at home education; it looks at all forms of alternative education, and it specialises in academic research into alternative education. And I'm also a moderator for several of the national groups. During lockdown, I was one of the part of a team that supported over 10,000 families who normally use school and were doing remote pandemic learning during the lockdown. And so a lot of experienced home educators got together to support those families through the pandemic and to kind of be like, it's all going to be fine. So I had to learn a lot about school attendance rules and things like that I hadn't learned before. And I'm also involved with setting up home education law projects and Joy Baker Fund that I'll be talking about tomorrow. So giving legal advice and support and funding to families who are in need of help in that area. So that's my background, really.
That's great. You don't happen to have parents who live in Wymondham in Norfolk, do you?
Yes.
I have met your parents on a train last year.
Amazing.
So we were going on the train to Sheringham, and I was reading a poem on the train, and your mum was going past. We'd seen them at the station, and then on the way back, she said, "Are you home educated?"
Because you can always tell.
Yes,
I have stopped families on. I had this once on a train when there was this lovely family next to me, and I just held it out for a while, and then eventually I was like, "Are you home educators? You have the aura."
Yeah,
how fabulous! Oh,
yeah. And I've not bumped into them ever again. But now I'm like, yes, I know who your daughter is. And she was so lovely and so encouraging. And she said that my daughter, I home educated my daughter, and now she works on on national stuff with educators. So I was like,
there you are. So this is probably one of the things for people who are new to illustrate that the community, if you're worried about finding friends, you will always be able to tell a home educator. I have even spotted home educators like in Bali who are from New Zealand, and there's just like, and I was chatting to one person who was American, and I just halfway through the conversation went, I know this is really random because she was my kind of age. I was like, were you like an American unschooler? And she went, yes, and you can just tell. So yeah, you'll always find people.
I found somebody while I was playing an online MMORPG, and she was home educating her kids. And the way that I could tell that she was home educating her kids is she went, hang on a second, my kid's just calling me and she wants a little bit of help with reaching the sauce off the top shelf for the bacon sandwich that she's making.
I thought you were going to say being unlocked from the cupboard under the stairs or something.
I was like,
terrible joke.
Didn't you say your child was 9? She's like, yeah. I was like, do you home educate by any chance?
Trusting the child. Anyway.
Young child cooking for themselves, definitely home educating. Do you want to give an intro then, Ruth?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, which one? Who are you talking?
Oh God, yeah, I forgot. Sorry, Ruth Barber.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, everybody knows Ruth Barber. Ruth's a very good name to have in home ed circles, apparently. Yeah, I've got 7 children. 5 of them are adult and beyond home education now. 3 of them went to university, and 2 are graduated, 1's about to graduate, and we've got 3 that are currently kind of doing a mix of A levels and GCSEs, and 1 that will start GCSEs next year. So obviously they've been home educating a long time because they've never been to school. It's been an amazing and a challenging and a everything journey, but not one that I would change. It's been an absolute delight, and it's just I'm very, very pro home ed. I think it's the most amazing thing. So yeah, anything I can do to help and to encourage people, I'm right there, because I think it's the most amazing thing. how will that do? I'm also quite involved in one or two of the national groups. I sit in on more than I actually do an awful lot, but I have a network of Christian families that I kind of, through CHESS, which is Christian Home Education Support Service, I do a lot of admin for them, run kind of Zoom sessions and involved in organising lots of things and answering questions and just supporting people generally through that. So yeah, it's just a really great thing to be involved in, and yeah, I'll always support it 100%. So that's me.
Go on then, Ruth Walker.
Okay, I'm Ruth. I've got 2 children. They are aged 9.5 and 6. I've home educated from the beginning because my son was born 3 months early, and would have been a summer baby in the year that he shouldn't have been, which seemed like a distinctively unfair disadvantage. So I never thought I would home educate. In fact, if you'd asked me before I had children whether I'd home educate, I'd been quite negative about it. But here we are. And it must be going okay because I've chosen to home educate our daughter as well. So that's us. We used to live in Warwickshire, and we moved back to Norfolk in 2020. Well, we tried to move in 2021, and by the time we got here, it was December. so maybe from 2022, we've been back in Norfolk. Yeah, this is us. We have quite a. I don't think I've sorted out exactly what we're doing yet. I think you never do, but it seems to be working. And I've had ticks from the LEA because we had a school place at one point booked and didn't accept it. And I've become very pro home ed for lots and lots of different reasons. Specifically, my son has probably got mild autism, and certainly for him going to school would be rather a challenge, and I'm just very grateful that he doesn't have to face that challenge every day, but that we can work with his strengths and weaknesses here, and that's me.
Yeah, Norfolk's a great place to be home educated.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But if
Not
I
that
could
you're
just...
biased or anything.
No. The county is your learning zone. But can I just say, I know we've got people in the audience and people maybe watching on replay. It's kind of lovely that all of us have done the all the way through thing, because that's slightly more unusual. So I'm really conscious that we might have people here who might be considering it from the start, but we're probably going to have a lot of people who've come to home ed from a point perhaps of mini or major crisis.
Yeah.
Bullying or special educational needs not being met, or like anxiety stuff happening in school. So like, please don't worry. Like, we've all supported tens of thousands of families from every background you can think of in our time, and the main thing is you're the person who knows the most about what your child needs is your child, closely followed by the parent. So you are the experts in what your family needs, more than us, or more than some random official who's never met you before, or more than some teacher online. Just have some faith that if you've managed to kind of raise your children to this point in some form or another, and then you're probably doing absolutely fine. And I'm not a parent, but I think part of being a parent is worrying that you're not doing it right. That seems to be a vibe. So, that seems normal. So I just wanted to say, don't think, oh, I haven't home educated from the start. Oh, it's fine.
No, absolutely. I've got a friend who's just, her daughter has started year 7 of secondary school, and then they've just very recently deregistered because for her it just was not a good fit, and supported her through that. And I've got another friend who has a son who is an adopted child with some difficult issues, and I've talked to her on several occasions about what might be best for him. I know schools can be challenging environments for all sorts of different reasons.
So my mum says the best advice she received as a new home educator 80 million years ago when we were little was to take it 1 year at a time. And I think that that's still really valid. Don't worry. If you've got a 6-year-old, don't be worrying about what they're going to do for GCSEs or A levels, because who knows if those exams will even be around, or if your child wants to be home educated at that point. Just think, what's going to work for our family for the next year. And as your children get older, they will be obviously having way more input into that. And as you move further away from the school system, you're likely to be less interested in what the school system's doing. But it's perfectly normal for people to home educate for a few years and then for a child to go to school or college, or to come out at like everyone's family's journey is different. So You don't. My sister and I were going to be home educated until we were 7. I've never been to school, so that went well. But yeah, 1 year at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think within that as well, I would say for me, it was very much a day at a time. It's like, what to get through today, never mind a year. It's like I couldn't face a year. It's like, I mean, I had 7 little ones who were very close together as well. So it really was kind of, how do I survive today?
Yeah.
Well, you basically
Without
had your
being
own
locked
school
in the
/
cupboard.
creche anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, but everybody comes with questions. Don't think that just because we're sitting here, we're still asking questions about our youngest 2, because they're all so different. So, everybody, sometimes a lot of people will say, well, oh, you must be an expert now. And I honestly wish that was the case. But it just isn't true, because every child has its own unique needs and interests. And, it really doesn't follow that just because, I mean, you might get a little bit more confident in that you don't worry in the same way. I don't worry now in the same way that I did, the first 10 years. I mean, I spent 10 years worrying, what if the LA came? Would I be doing enough? And I lived with that unnecessary worry every day, because I was just petrified that I'd be found lacking. And, if I could say one thing to myself, looking back when I started out, just live the day and enjoy it. Don't be worrying, because it robs all the joy from it. And, I would scold myself and just take myself in hand, if I could, and just say, don't worry, just focus on the joy, focus on getting to know your children, focus on all the fantastic opportunities and different things that you can learn. Really, the world is your oyster, and you just need to revel in it and enjoy it. And the learning will happen, because you can't stop them learning. I mean, times our kids have come out with stuff, and we've Charles and I have looked at each other and said, how did they know that? And I honestly don't know how they've learnt it, because they're just like sponges. They're made to learn. So it's not what I can teach them, it's how I can facilitate them and give them opportunities to learn for themselves.
Oh, we've got a question there, Ruth.
Sorry?
Yeah.
We've got a question there from
Get
Yeah,
you.
Do you want to unmute?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, hello.
Hi, Ruth. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to end up raising my hand about 1 million times in this hour or so. Sorry.
No, please do,
I'm just
because then we don't have to
intrigued.
witter on at random.
So one of the things that I have struggled with in me thinking about all of this homeschooling, considering it, but at the moment, my son, I've got 3 children. I've got a 5-year-old and then babies. I've got a 1-year-old and a 5-month-old. So for my 5-year-old, it's whom we're thinking of homeschooling, maybe flexi, anyway, we're along that sort of, we're considering. But one of the things I've occasionally struggled with is the idea that the national curriculum is potentially I say potentially, but maybe it's the best curriculum, or at the very least, maybe there's something in it with I consider that the heads are
We're all
shaking
like,
already, but maybe there's something.
No.
I don't know if there's something in it with the whole kind of teachers qualified, thing. There's an attachment I'm struggling with in shaking off of kind of this national curriculum. They're at school, they learn everything they should do. The minute I take him out of that and we do maybe another curriculum, or obviously just, as you say, alternative ways of learning and what have you, will I have missed something? Will I have missed, an area? Will he? I don't know. This is just a little bit of something I'm struggling with, and I just wondered. I hope I'm making sense, by the way.
You're making complete sense.
Unfortunately.
But I just wondered if there's if you could talk to that, because that worries me.
There's a couple of myths in there that we could probably dispel. Do you want to try and tackle one of them, Ruth? One of Ruth's? Yeah,
Okay.
go for it, Walker.
Okay, sure. That's a really good question. It actually is something that I have thought about as well quite a lot over the years. I'm guessing that you have heard that you don't need to keep to the national curriculum as a home educating mum. So that doesn't mean you don't have to. If you think that's what's going to work for you, then you could go and print out the national curriculum and lesson plan and, buy the books and get yourself in quite a stew, I should imagine, trying to follow it. When I started home educating, I was very keen to try and keep my son abreast of roundabout where he should be on the national curriculum. And I think I've lost a couple of years doing that because actually, you know, it was a little bit pointless.
Grey hairs as well, Walker.
I do have grey hairs. So for me, yes, it's a curriculum that works because schools make it work, but it is designed for schools. And the great joy of home educating is the freedom that you have to go with your child's interests and your child's abilities. You know, there's no race in home education. You're a one person entry. So you know, my son is probably slightly behind where he needs to be in maths, and he's way ahead where he needs to be in reading and phonics and spelling because he learnt to read when he was 4 and he has a photographic memory. So we were ticking off the boxes on phonics, but then I suddenly realized that he didn't understand everything that he was reading, even though he could read it extremely well. You know, so can you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So I've stopped doing that. I do follow a maths curriculum which isn't based on the national curriculum. It's a free curriculum from The Good and the Beautiful, and the only reason I'm doing that is because it's set out in years and there's a lesson for every day, and that works for us. You know, and I've begun to learn to let go of standards and expectations that schools have for children. I'm confident that he's learning. I'm confident that he's getting confident with what he knows, because you know, you can learn something and still not be confident about being able to then regurgitate it and use it. So it is something I've thought about, but you know, one of the beauties for me is actually home education is quite freeing, really.
Yeah, thank you.
I've drawn a picture and everything, but Ruth, you want to go first?
Yeah, because I say, much as I say that I lived in fear of the LA coming, I definitely did not want to follow the curriculum, the national curriculum. So I took the decision that I was never going to actually look at it to even see what I ought to be doing, because I knew that if I did that, I would feel that as a pressure that I had to do it. So I decided very early on that, you know, that just wouldn't be helpful for me. It wouldn't be conducive. That wasn't the reason that we were home educating, to follow a set of somebody else's rules. We wanted to focus on our individual children. We wanted to kind of play to their strengths and abilities and their interests. So I thought that it would have gone against everything, you know, our whole reasons for home educating, to just follow this other curriculum. So, but I still kind of get what you're saying about missing things, because when we started, I just used to buy books from the supermarket, you know, little gold stars books and things to do elements of maths, and I think that worked absolutely fine in the early years. But there did come a point, and I reckon for us it was when the oldest were about maybe 7 or 8. We were kind of maths, but we realised that actually maths is very much a principle upon principle subject. And so there came a point where we felt that it was helpful to follow a curriculum, because we knew that then there wouldn't be any gaps in that particular learning. But you know, there were 7 or 8 before maybe there were 7 before we actually got to that stage. And it all for us, it tied in because there was more children arriving. So I think we must have had 5 by the time the eldest were at that stage. So for us then, it's a whole kind of reshake happening in terms of we needed some sort of a timetable again. We didn't want to have a timetable. We didn't want it to feel or look like school, but it became a practical needs. We needed to have times where the older ones, you know, they should be doing this at any given point. And so it's a very loose table, but it was helpful so that the home ran in such a way that we actually timetabled slots. And with that came along a little bit of structured work where we did follow a curriculum for maths. We didn't do it for everything, but just, you know, one at a time, we kind of introduced a little bit more kind of, some more kind of structure, because it helps the whole family thing to work. I mean, eventually, say we had 7 children in 9 years, and it was just juggling all that. It was helpful to have structure in place, but we didn't put it in place because we felt that we had to. And making sure that things worked. You know, and even when we had that, there were times where if it got a bit dry, we'd just say, let's have a break from that, and we'd just give them some different random things to do that still we just gave them a break for a week or a couple. So, you know, again, curriculum is fine, but you've got to use the curriculum, not be bound by it. And I think that's another thing we felt. You can have a curriculum, but feel free to break from it for a little while and do something to keep the, you know, keep their interest. And because we can be bound by these things, you know, but we don't need to be. And so it's finding what works and knowing when to make a change. You know,
that's really helpful.
And did you say that you had something you wanted to add?
I've drawn a picture and everything.
3 points. So see if you can get my 3.
Yeah, Amy's probably like, okay. So, well, the first thing I'd say is like, what do you think is happening apart from your legal duty changing? What do you think is magically happening on the whenever day, the first day of the term following your child's 5th birthday, that makes them a completely different child? That you need to approach parenting differently? Because home education, I think this is a problem, like this is why some of us are very strong about it's home education, it's not homeschooling, because it's not like some people do school at home, and if that genuinely works for your family, then awesome. But I think if you only ever did school at home, you're wasting home education as an opportunity, because schooling is not like schooling is one way of learning, education is so much bigger. And again, I don't want to go into like your child's medical history or anything, because there might be private details, but like the vast majority of children, you know, if they don't have a disability, by the time they're 5 or 6, will have acquired a whole language, sometimes more than one. They'll learn they'll know how to walk, you know, all of that stuff. And that didn't happen because you were like, oh, I have to sit them down at Tuesday at 9 o'clock, and then we're going to do half an hour of walking lessons, and then I'm going to ring a bell, and then we're going to do half an hour of talking lessons, and then you know what I mean? Because you live your life, and you have conversations, and they watch you doing stuff, and so you really need to detach in your brain this idea that school is education, and you've now got to do school because school is school, and school has some structures in place that help them manage the fact that there's 1 adult and 30 children, and they've got to try and keep everyone together. And that means that children are having to learn in a way that doesn't actually necessarily meet their needs unless they're average, and who's ever met a child who's average, right? So the national curriculum didn't exist when I was little. And we had no desire to, I'm really old, but it just didn't exist. So, and then it came in later, and we had absolutely no desire in taking part in it. I did do exams and stuff when I was older. And another thing is about intrinsic motivation. If you want to learn something, you will learn it very quickly. So if I said to you, congratulations, you're going on holiday to Italy next week, and you've never been to Italy before, you'd suddenly be like, oh, maybe I'm going to get Duolingo, I'm going to get a book from the library, I'm going to ask and you're going to learn loads of stuff about Italy really fast because it's interesting to you. If you suddenly decide that you want to do some formal maths qualifications or some formal English qualifications, and you're like, I know why I want to do those qualifications, you will be able to pick that stuff up really fast because you are choosing to do it, and you have a reason and a motivation, so long as you've been exposed in general to maths and literacy and all that stuff in your real life, which you would have done if you've baked a cake or you've gone to the supermarket, or you know, you're talking about having your babies, you've guessed the weight of the baby, you've measured measured how big mummy's tummy's getting, and you know, you'll have done all that stuff.
We did maths at climbing today just to really drive it home.
So I am very, very, I don't know if we can see this with my camera. That's not working, is it? I'm gonna have to take my background off. Hold on. I'm very bad at drawing diagrams, but I just wanted to show you a diagram with the national curriculum versus your legal duties, because I think that might help reassure you. Let me just choose virtual background. Let's just take my virtual background off because it does not like. There we go, you can see my messy office. I'm terrible at drawing. So you have if you're in England, Section 7 of the Education Act 1996, the parent of every child shall cause their child to receive an education suitable to their age, ability and aptitude, and to any special educational needs they may have. Every single parent in the whole country, whether they send their child to school or not, has that duty. The law demands a personalised education. So school has to provide the national curriculum a broad and balanced education because they are trying to overlap with lots of children's age, ability and aptitudes. So in school, it might be that there are some children for whom all of their age, ability and aptitude needs are being met, and the parent has discharged their legal duty by sending that child to school. There are going to be lots of children whom some of their needs are being met, but maybe they're particularly good at music or particularly good at Italian, and their parent needs by law to top that up because they've got an age, ability and aptitude that's higher or lower than the broad and balance being offered in school. And there'll be some children for whom everything that's in broad and balance has got nothing to do with their age, abilities and aptitudes, and they need something entirely different. So if you follow the national curriculum and that's all you do, there is no guarantee you're following the law anyway. Because you have a legal duty, and this legal duty is the same. If you send your child to school, it's theoretically possible to send your child to school and be breaking the law, because you have to ensure that your child receives an education suitable to their age, ability and aptitude and any special needs they may have. And that's an education, that's not a schooling. So basically home education, especially in the early years, is parenting and having fun and playing and making cakes and going to playgrounds and enjoying your life and doing interesting things that aren't necessarily expensive. And learning through life is allowed. Having said that, it doesn't matter what we say, you're going to get workbooks at some point anyway, because everyone has that panic, and that's just like a life stage, isn't it?
On that note, Anne, you did a really good one there, Anne. You linked us to Hazel's question next. She has a son the same age as mine, and she made the fatal mistake of getting CGP books. So we've just covered the two myths of you have to be a teacher, you have to follow the curriculum, and now we're on to myth number 3.
To be fair, Hazel says he asked for them, so that's child-led learning. That's all right, because that's otherwise 700 quid you're not going to get back, is it, Hazel?
Okay, as long as he asked for them.
Yeah. If a child wants to learn in a formal way, that's absolutely that's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, Hazel, we're this isn't meant to. Please, nobody take anything we say as a criticism of them personally. That is not the intention in any way, shape, or form.
My son did say that he would like to try something along those lines. So we had a look and we picked his favorite subject, and we got the CGP book that was like a little compact snapshot of different bits and different levels of that particular subject. And I think we've done maybe one sheet, maybe half a book or something along that line, and we've had it for over a year.
Yeah, like maybe if you want to do that stuff, like get it from the library or ask the home educators who got those books and then went, this doesn't work for us, and buy them off them for 50p rather than like if you want to do that, or your child wants to do it, or you're experimenting with different ways of learning, that's totally awesome. But don't think, oh my gosh, day one my child is 5, I now must go and spend £800 in every workbook, otherwise I'm not doing it properly. Because
I think Hazel, the other part of your question is a really valid question, which is how do you facilitate or direct your child to self-learn where his passion for something ignites his curiosity? Do you have any tips? I think that's a really great question, because my son's 9.5 and I'm struggling sometimes to say, look, for him to take ownership actually of what he's doing. He's getting to an age where I would like to think he can take some ownership, because then I won't have to think about everything. And that's quite a difficult stage, I think. And I think it's not going to be an overnight fix. So for me, trying to direct him to self-learn is very much about, I do have a plan. This is my plan. It's all in here. It's a day to a page diary, and I just write it out every week. And it just says maths, music on Monday, geography on a Tuesday. It's very, very vague. But then with him, I sit down and say, okay, these are the things that you need to cover this week. I would like you to do a little bit each day. If you want to do it all in one go, that's fine, but that's probably not the best idea. So he's got to the stage now where we have a rhythm, and it's about building in rhythms, and don't be conflicted about having a rhythm in your household. That doesn't mean that's you leading it. It's just an encouragement. All of us need at some stage in life to be able to sort out what it is we need to do and in which order we need to do it. So that's a real life skill, isn't it? So encouraging self-led learning for me is still a process that we're ongoing. But at the moment for us, it looks like this is what we're expecting to do today. If it gets done, we'll tick it. If it doesn't, we'll just write it in for another day. And then when the passion comes in, that's something completely different as well, isn't it? Because my son's very musical, actually. I was going to say about the national curriculum, you get pages and pages and pages about maths and English, and then there's like 2 lines about music. Well, my son is gifted musically, and so, you know, how do I stop him playing the piano? That's what I want to know, actually. And how do I stop him wanting to fix his cuckoo clock that he's got been given because he's been learning about the Black Forest, and he's been given a cuckoo clock and he'd really like to know how to fix it because that's what his mindset is. Yeah, so it's about, with all home education, isn't it? It's knowing your child and knowing their strengths and knowing their weaknesses and working with their interests. It's I don't have any.
I like that you showed me your nice big yellow folder. I do this, which is a wipeable laminate. And I think for everybody here, I will recommend now Laminator, best investment you will ever do. I have laminated so many things. And this one is, I've been using this since he was like 3 or 4. And what we do is we split the day up and we just write in. And what I normally did when he was much younger is I used blue tack, and he would put what he wanted to do and where, and there would be enough things that he would have a choice that was so large that he couldn't fit everything in. So he could maybe do like 2 things a week that he wanted to, and then he could write in that he wanted to play with the dog or something else around it. And he still uses this on and off, but it's not set in stone. And that's why laminated is really good, because I can just go, I don't want to do that anymore. Just wipe it up with my finger and put something else there. Or we're delayed on that day, so we'll put it off until next week. It's lovely.
I come in quite quickly as well, because I noticed, Hazel, you said that your 12-year-old had recently deregistered, and so I think it's also really important to acknowledge that, you know, if he's recently deregistered, then that might well have been, you know, for some reason of something that's happened at school. And so it's really important and really common for people to have what we call a deschooling period, where you and your child just need to work out how you learn, and that might look like quite a long time of recovery. It might look like quite a long time when he's just playing games or reading books, and you think he's not learning anything, but he is really, and just taking that pressure off. And I used to joke that I could normally tell how many months someone had been home educating by what they're doing, because there's quite a predictable pattern of, like, when you deregister, people immediately want to do a timetable and they want to do school at home, and then they'll kind of go, oh well, that doesn't work, and then they'll go kind of completely autonomous for a while, and then they'll kind of find the balance that fits their family. And so time to recover from school and doing, you know, if he's asking for books and textbooks, and that's awesome because you're following his lead, that's amazing. But don't forget, get in touch with your local home ed community. If I think it was he, sorry, I'm sorry, if your child enjoys you know, scouts, or has a passion for drama, or likes playing the trombone, or, you know, likes volunteering, going to a museum, going on a day out, going to the seaside, when it's going to the theme park, when it's Wednesday and it's wet and you get all of the stuff to yourself. All of that is learning. Life's an education. Conversational learning is a genuine form of learning that happens at universities. Taking an interest in, asking him what he's interested in, and just taking the pressure off for a while, because he needs to regain his confidence in learning and not associating learning with a distressing circumstance, because that might be a link in his mind, and we need to get the link back to being learning as life and learning as fun.
The one I use as well, Anne, and I'm glad you picked that up because it was in the back of my mind and I forgot about it. The one I always use as an example is to people, when you start a new job, you have a probation period. And when you start home educating, it's a new environment, it's new surroundings, and there are new things for you to do. And schools actually factor this in, because every time they change teachers, each year that they have the children go away, have a summer break or even a half-term break, and they come back again, the children are unsettled because the environment has changed. And you just have to give them that little extra bit of time to adjust. And they, you know, all of these social workers have always told me children are resilient and they bounce. I'm telling you now, they're not. Yes, they are quite resilient, and yes, they do bounce. But if you give them the time to readjust, it's much better for them than expecting them to just jump in the deep end and say, sink or swim. So to me, when you start educating, yes, you need to get rid of that trauma, but you also need to understand that it's just like starting a new job. And how did you feel when you started your new job? How terrifying was it? How uncertain were you? Did you know the people around you? Did you know you were going to get on with them? And that team building that you do with your child, that needs to build up, because through the rough times and the good times that you're going to have ahead, if you've got that team building that you've set in place, that relationship, you can get through it. It doesn't matter what life throws at you then.
Yeah, can I just come on the back of that as well and just say, yeah, if you've recently deregistered, it's all part of the process, isn't it? In school, kids are told what to do every second of every day. And, you know, it can be, I think CGP books, that's probably his default. You know, if I'm doing that, I know that I'm learning. And, you know, he will naturally, if you're engaging him in conversation and asking what he's learning, maybe you start by just saying, well, where else could we go to learn about that? Or how does that, you know, where do we discover more about that in real life? And just asking some questions means that he may actually start to kind of think, oh, well, I'd like to go and do that. You know, maybe I'd like to go to the library and look up, or maybe I'll do a little kind of internet search and just see what it pulls up. And just by asking him those questions, you're opening up his mind to the fact that there's different ways to learn, and that you're not going to give him everything on a plate and that's the sum total, because that's what school does. It's the way it has to be, isn't it? But it's just little ways that you can start to just kind of unlock the fact that you can actually do anything and you know, learn anywhere. And it's just, it will be a process. And like Anne said, it does take time. But, you know, there's a few things that you can do as well to help. I mean, one of the things we did when ours were quite young was we had a period where we did kind of tea talks. So, I mean, there were literally 5 minutes, but we'd ask them one a week. I think it was a Tuesday tea time. We'd just give them opportunity. We'd say, it's your turn next week. Find out about something and tell us about it. And so, you know, obviously that was a huge brief. But, you know, kind of take them on one side and say, well, what are you going to talk about? It could be a famous person. It could, you know, it could be anything. It could be a precious metal. It could be a sport. It can, you know, whatever it is, but just find something that you'd like to know more about, and then just tell us, you know, and if that was still too big a thing, well, then find 3 things to say about it. And, you know, that was just amazing, because we learnt about, also, I can't remember what they talked about now, but it was just this idea that, you know, I can actually independently find out about something and tell you, because you don't know, I'm learning something that not everybody else is. And that was a really good, it was a really good thing to do. I mean, we only did it for a period, but that's the sort of thing where you can ignite some independent learning, you know, and just give them some small tasks that just kind of open their eyes to the possibilities of finding things out for themselves. So, I mean, again, it's very much, you need to find where his passions are and where his what he's interested in. And like, who was it Ruth said about the cuckoo clock? Well, you know, again, we had somebody gave us an old computer, because we had one that liked to take things apart, and just looking on FreeCycle, and, you know, to find things that it doesn't matter if they destroy it and they put it back together, they can play with it. You know, that they would get so much learning out of something like that. If that's how he's wired, well, then find lots of different things and just say, there you go, there's your screwdriver, do what you like with it, because it actually doesn't matter whether it breaks, or, you know, he'll learn so much. And if that's the way they're wired, you know, that's the things that you need to be noticing, isn't it? What are they actually interested in? If they're not doing anything, what do they gravitate to? You know, are they do they go to the Lego? Are they constructing things? You know, are they creative? Do they want to get the paints out? You know, just giving them time and space to say, well, what do you want to do? Just, you know, go and do it. We'll do whatever you want to do. Then you'll find out how they're wired, because, you know, they naturally gravitate, don't they, to what they want to do. And I think just giving them the space and the time to say, okay, you've got an hour. What do you want to do? We can do anything. See what they say. And you'll still find you've got an engineer, if you've got an artist, if you've got a musician, because that's what they want to do.
So
That's great, isn't it? We've got some questions in the chat, but also Claire, you've come on with your camera. Would you like to ask a question, or were you just coming on with your camera?
No, please come on with your camera. We love seeing you.
Just thought I'd turn my camera on.
Oh, great. Well, it's very nice to see you. And I do like your mirror. It's got a really nice frame.
That's so cool. Is it like sweeties?
Pom-poms. It's all coloured.
Yeah, it's
Pom-poms.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of my favourites. Yeah,
Interesting.
sorry. I'm not actually.
Oh,
No.
I think it's-
Your internet just froze there, Claire.
You can learn
Okay,
something.
so we go
Oh,
to
sorry,
the
Claire.
husband
Go.
question.
Sorry.
Oh, is it come back again for you?
Yeah.
Claire?
Claire, you're back. You froze up there, Claire. We lost you
I
mid-sentence.
was just saying, I feel a bit of a fraud because I'm not actually a newbie, but
Oh, I-
Come and be helpful.
but I always think you can learn something, so I thought I'd come in anyway. And
Oh, great.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you for
good.
coming.
Oh, and I was just going to say off the back of Hazel's question, I think like I'm personally very into child-led learning, but I think the one thing that a parent, like the only thing really a parent needs to teach is how to look things up, and then in an age-appropriate way, how to verify sources. Because once you know how to look things up, then
Fact busting.
everything is, then the whole world is there. And it's so much easier nowadays with Google.
Okay, so we've got dad questions here now. So
Hooray.
I always like it when the dads get involved. It always makes me feel really happy to
That's
know.
good.
I like it when the dads come to the groups and things as well. It changes the dynamic. Okay, so question number 1, what would you say are any disadvantages about, I can't even say the
I
word.
can't say, yeah, I'd say home education.
educating.
Yeah,
sorry
again.
I
One day
can't
you'll
do
understand
it.
this again. Yeah, I can't do it either.
The disadvantages, we actually had touched on this morning very, very briefly. Do you want to reiterate it, Ruth? Because we summarized it very early this morning, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Juliet was sharing was that her children would have said, if so her older kids, looking back, felt that they were misunderstood a lot. People don't understand about home education, so therefore they automatically assumed that they were not achievers, that they couldn't possibly college courses, whereas actually the opposite is true, because they're self-directed learners. They actually embrace the course and they're wanting to excel. And I think that was problematic for them, because all the time they were kind of felt that they were being looked down on almost because they're home educated, and that is purely because they were not understood. I think obviously that's a little while ago now, but I think that can be something that people presume a lot about home education when they don't know about it. And very often it's institutions, it can be colleges, although I think things are opening up a bit more these days. There is a lot more people that are doing home ed. So hopefully that's beginning to change, but that can be something that, there's a lot of presumptions and there's a lot of myths and a lot of misnomers that people understand about home ed. And well, we're working on those. But
Okay. Before you go too much into your second question then, Ruth, I'm going to get Anne, because I know she's got experience in this sort of area.
Lived experience.
Can you apply to universities such as Oxford if you are home educated?
Yes, I mean, obviously things change all the time, but most of the time universities really like home educated young people, because university is about self-directing your learning. So if someone has come and they have just done that for their entire lives and they know why they're applying to university, then that's very attractive, because fundamentally universities, because of the way they're funded, want people who are going to get through the course. And so I mean, again, it's old now, but my sister, who's another Ruth, she applied to Durham, and in true home ed style, Ruth applied to one course at one university because that's the course she wanted to do. And people were like, well, what happens if you don't get in? And she's like, well, here's my plan of the other thing I'd like to do that's quite interesting, So she knew why she wanted to be there. And so when they were interviewing her, then they were obviously like, I mean, how wonderful is that, right? You've got someone who's like, I just want to come here, I want to do this course, here's why, I know why I want to do it. And that's a real advantage. I have got I know someone who was determined that he wanted to go to Cambridge, I think it was either Cambridge or Oxford, to do law, so a very competitive course. And And because he was home educated, he had been fascinated by the law from a young age, because we tend to have to for our own preservation. And he had managed to get work experience at every single court in the London district, and then applied to university. And like, can you imagine, you've got someone who's applying who's like, I have been working in every court in London, I understand the law, I'm really motivated, I know why I want to come. And also he was unafraid to argue with anybody on a legal point, because his dad was a barrister, and I've seen him take his dad down several times. It's absolutely hilarious. And he got an unconditional offer, because of course they're like, of course we want you to come. You're going. And he got a first and is now practicing as a barrister and doing very well, because he knew why he wanted to be there. So yeah, home ed is a great preparation for university if that's what you want to do. And I think as a someone who was home educated, so long as you are not doing it against your child's will, you know, and school's always there as an option and all that kind of stuff, but there are no disadvantages for a child at all. There aren't really disadvantages, but yeah, like you were saying, the problems are more discrimination, systematic and systemic discrimination, and the current kind of climate where we're having to fight all the time for our right to exist. That is hard. But the actual being home educated, I mean, the word we all tend to talk about the most is joy, isn't it? It's just joyful.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, they were good questions, and I think they've been answered really well. I would just say to your husband that your child is 5. And I don't mean to be funny about that, but
give it 2 years before the Oxford application, right?
Yeah, it's a long time. It's a long game, isn't it? What we're in here is a long game, and there's certainly things that I have considered and thought about. At the moment, my son, who's 9.5, I'm thinking, well, I'll offer him to see if he wants to go to secondary, and we'll see, you know, and maybe if he doesn't want to go to secondary, then he can apply to the 14 to 16 at Norwich City College. And, you know, just relax is what I would say. He is 5. If when you start home educating, he turns out to be as bright as a button and soaks everything up, and, you know, yeah, think about Oxford and think about, okay, well, what would you like to be? And cross each bridge as it comes. There are no barriers to going to Oxbridge universities or whatever they're called, red brick ones. But that's a long way away. And on the disadvantages front, the only thing I would say, it's not a disadvantage at all, but so sometimes I think, not my children, but I think my children might miss out on team games, you know, on a sports day, and you know, things like that. But the way we get around that is we seek out opportunities for them to spend time with their friends. And so he goes to an orchestra and he gets a lot of team player experience from an orchestra rather than a rugby pitch where he would be trampled to death. So, you know, there are ways around the things that we lack. Unless you have 7 children. Let's have 7
children. Yeah, that's the other option.
If you have 7 children, then
you've got your own squad.
Because it's up the road and it's easy.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, but
yeah. I just spent £206 on a cricket bat and some gloves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That actually leads me into saying that actually maybe cost could be a bit of a disadvantage when you're talking exams. You don't have to do exams, but if you do, you have to pay for that yourself. But
take the money you would have spent on CGP workbooks, put it in a crypto, not legal advice, not financial advice. Invest it somewhere now, and then you might be able to afford the exams later.
As a parent who did actually send 2 children to school, I can tell you the difference price-wise, and the £400-500 you spent alone on school uniform in September is just a massive chunk out of your budget. And you don't have to spend that all in one go. You can say, oh, do you know what, this year we might actually do Legoland. And when you total it up, Legoland does not cost the same as a £400 uniform. And you think, okay, well, I would normally have bought all the pens and all the pencils, the ruler, the pencil case and everything else that my child would have needed to go to school with anyway. And then at secondary school, you would have to have bought all of the textbooks and things like that to go with their studies. So actually, where are you spending extra money? It is purely on the uniforms. And then obviously the headmaster sends around a letter every month saying, we need donations, we need an expected donation of X, Y, or Z from all the families, and then you're looking at regularly spending on the school and topping their budget up instead of topping your child's personalized educational budget up.
Yeah.
Massive difference.
Yes, I think that's very valid, isn't it? And not that I've had the actual experience of having to pay for things at school. I will just say that we have from the beginning been on a very, very tight budget, and it's as expensive or as cheap as you want it to be. There are free curriculums out there which are absolutely top notch, and there are great resources in secondhand shops and charity shops and Facebook Marketplace and FreeCycle and Gumtree, and I do supplement my home educating budget by reselling the books that we've already used. I would like to keep them, but actually it goes towards days out and outings and exciting things. So yeah, money can be a bit of a disadvantage, but it doesn't have to be a barrier.
No, and it's also a life skill, isn't it? You know, balancing the budget, saying, okay, we've got X amount to spend. What are we going to do? What's the priority?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Everything you can turn into a learning opportunity, can't you? And include the children as well.
Yeah.
If you don't get at school, they've no idea of the cost of things or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, so there are lots and lots of free resources out there. There's sites that even list the free sites out there because there are that many. And obviously you can always dip your toe into the American curriculum, which I actually found was like a half year different to ours. So their kindergarten was equivalent to our Key Stage Year 1. So you could kind of then feather it up. If you were looking at resources, you can then look at maybe year 1 or 2 if your child is year 3 or 4.
I don't know what any of that means, Amy, because our children aren't year 3 or 4, they're their own selves and their own age.
Yeah,
actually what you say is so I'm certainly doing that on the Good and the Beautiful Maths, right? So they do have years, but they have placement tests. So they have a series of placement tests and you just go through them with your child, and whichever one they get stuck most on is the way you start. So we're doing a year 1 and a year 3 American style for somebody who would be a year 1 and a year 5 in the UK. But I'm happy that they're just doing something and that it's at their level and that they're confident with it and that they're gaining confidence. So yeah, that's free. Hazel, you were asking about making money, business, entrepreneurship, any ideas for that? And Anna's put a great suggestion in. The thing I would say is we did, in the summer, we did a book sale outside our house, and we pop it on our Facebook local page, and all the books were 20p and the children got to keep that. You could do bake sales, you could do growing plants, that's biology, something in season, buy the seeds, buy the pots, buy the compost, which you can probably find for free, people giving away, and then sell the plants, so lots and lots of different ideas about that. Or find something, get into antique dealing, actually old Rupert annuals or whatever, find something at a charity shop and flog them on for another couple of quid or whatever.
Or like knowing how to sell things online. And I don't mean just eBay, but kind of, there's so many opportunities now because you don't just have to have a customer base that's in your village or your town. You can have people who are based all over the world. So perhaps if he's got a particular talent for making websites or making games or packaging things up in some way, and that's why I said, like, we used to do stuff, it was for charity, but you could just do it for yourself, where it, inflation has probably kicked in, so in our day it was like £5, but maybe now it would be £10, where you'd be given £10 to buy ingredients for cakes, and then you'd be expected to raise £10 back, and then the rest would be given to the charity. So maybe it could be the bank of parents invest £10 in your company, and you then have to buy stuff, and then you have to pay back that loan interest free to the bank, and mum and dad have £10, but then maybe your cake sale made you £15, so you made £5 profit, and then what are you going to do with it? And those are really useful head start on. My sister and I had a really booming babysitting business in our mid-teens because we could babysit during the day and we were really good with children. And yeah, so isn't that amazing? And what a fantastic thing he's getting to do, that he, without wasting his time being at school. Don't know how, yeah.
I love the way that you say that, wasting.
Well, there's all this stuff that you're doing that isn't relevant to your life that you're not interested in. Whereas if you were spending those 5 hours a day really understanding kind of how to run a business, that would be incredible.
That's exactly what my son would say.
You see, he knows what he's up to, and I love that you're like, he doesn't know what to do or how to learn. He's like, oh, seriously, is he reading Warren Buffett? And like, teach. I mean, obviously, steer him in the direction of conscientious capitalism or whatever. But like, don't it'd be nice if he wasn't like an arms dealer or something. But like, he sounds amazing. How cool is that? He's like come out of school and he's going, I'm going to run a business. Awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of what he wants to do. He wants to make money and just thinks school was a complete waste of time. And
he needs to learn about like the legal side of a business and like how to set up a website and GDPR and like working hours that he can do, all that kind of stuff. Like there's so many, and obviously having a helpful and supportive parent to kind of keep an eye alongside and make sure he's safe if he's doing online stuff. But like those are incredible life skills that are really useful and are in demand.
And can teach me as well how to run a business. And
also in the future, if you're UK based and you're exporting abroad, the government will throw money at you to take innovations from the UK abroad.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's like there's a whole world out there. It's really exciting. And
brilliant. Thank you.
Good on him. Like maybe he could read Profit First, which is like how to structure your finances. It's quite an easy book. And he can start doing that with his pocket. If he's allowed pocket money, he can start doing that with his pocket money.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I always say to do a SWOT analysis as well. It's the one thing that businesses forget to do. SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. Really good one.
Thank you.
I think we've got a couple of minutes left, haven't we? Has anyone got any more burning questions?
I was going to ask actually, Vanessa, I don't think you've said anything. Are you happy with what we've said in the session today? And is there anything that you would like us to cover before we have to go? I think we can overflow a little bit because it's the last in the day, but if anyone's got anything that they have any burning desires to ask, do it now.
And ideally come back in a year and go, no, you're all wrong and this is what we did. That's much better, right? That's a better way, isn't it? Like maybe the best advice is don't take anything anyone else tells you as being true.
Really, really, really random and probably a bit silly, but I'm just wondering, like all the work that you do with the kids, like what do you do with it? Like do you keep it forever?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question, actually. So I did keep mine for quite a while because I, like Ruth, actually had this overwhelming fear that the LEA would find me lacking. So I've had some boxes in my loft of things that they've done. And so you can keep it. And if you want to keep it, that's great. But you don't actually have to. And sometimes the local authority, if you're in contact with them, will say, have you got any examples of your child's work? But I'm not.
Don't give it to them.
No, you don't have to do that.
You need to hold that line.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. So it's up to you, really. If you've got space to keep it and you don't think your roof will fall down from all the things you get up to, then, hold on to it, but you don't have to.
Yeah, another thing that we learnt kind of at one point was to take photographs and keep them in files. And if you want, you can print them out and make little booklets for the children for their own kind of, because the things that they make, I mean, our boys were always creating things and they were so precious, but we just could not keep them. So when we heard that, and I think there's a security that's kind of, they have like is it an app where you can just take photographs and you can keep like a year at a time? And so it's like, and then I think it makes it into a little snapshot film kind of thing. So there's different digital options like that that can really help because you've got that record that they can still look at it, but you don't actually have to physically keep all the stuff.
I feel really old school now, Ruth. I've got everything in display pocket cases. So it's a file with lots of A4 plastic wallets. and you just slide everything in.
Depends on your space, doesn't it? I mean, we had 7
Yeah.
going, so it's
I
like
just feel so out of date now.
You have a whole annex of the archive. Ruth, just
I
being-
do. I've got
landing and everything.
little green you know, the bankers boxes that you can get.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got those along the top of my cupboard here, and then I've got a row of them along the bottom, so Bastian can always go back and actually consult what he was doing last year or last month, and he can actually go through it and say, oh yeah, I want to do this again. And that really has helped him, because he's got a problem where he needs to repeat things a lot to retain the information. And we used to, when he was much younger, play lots of games, and I still have his word tin here somewhere. It's always around me, where I will put little 5-minute things to do. And the one that we've got at the moment, because he's 12, it's gone up. So it's gone from like weeks of days of the week, months of the year, and you know, sight words, the Dolce words that don't fit. It's gone from those to now he's got numbers and decimal points, and then we make a number up on the floor, and then he has to round it off to so many decimal points, multiply it by 100, divide it by 1,000 or whatever, and that just gets him going. And he doesn't have to sit still. He can dance around on the floor while he's doing it, but he can, while he's physically moving things, it focuses him much better. And I get more done from that word tin than I can from sitting him down at a table, which was quite funnily one of the 3 points I wrote down about your comment with the curriculum. One of the very first things in the curriculum, it says that they must learn to do, and it sounds so much like Harry Potter, which when I went through it, they must sit at a table and learn to hold a pencil in a tripod grip. Just to really hammer it home, that is the curriculum. They must learn to have done that by the age of 4.
Oh goodness.
Not developmentally relevant for most 4-year-olds either.
My son has just
Most
been
children
picked
don't.
up. He's got hypermobility in his first and second joint of his fingers, which is why he has abstained from holding a pen or a pencil in a tripod grip, and why he has abstained from drawing until now. He's only just starting to draw and write for himself. It has not stopped him from developing, being able to type, being able to use an Xbox controller, being able to do everything digitally. And that is where the school system would have, and that's my indication, finally, 12 years later, I knew something wasn't quite right. 12 years later, he would really have struggled. And I'm so glad that I took that leap of faith really early on and just went, and as I said earlier, I trusted the process. And you just have to know that the only person that you are responsible to is your child. That local authority person can go do one, because all they're there to do is stand with a clipboard and tick boxes. They can go home at night and sleep well. Whether they have traumatized your child or whether they have ticked their boxes, they don't care. As long as they get to go home at the end of the day. You don't get to go home. This is forever. That child is your responsibility. And as long as you know that you are doing what you and that child know is best, that's all that matters. And you carry on marching forward. You know, don't compare yourself to other people.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Sorry, say that again.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
It most definitely is. I like that.
Yeah,
That works really well.
it's my mantra.
Your mantra. Can you have it tattooed somewhere?
Well, not on me, no.
on your big wall.
Maybe, yeah.
Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Anne. I think I need to go as well.
Yeah,
That's
I've
fine.
left the children unattended, and they've been very quiet. So
they'll have built a den.
yeah, I think they probably have.
Mine's YouTube binging.
Bye all.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care. Take care.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Bye.